My beloved child. Stop scrolling, not because of fear, but because something gentle and extraordinary has been waiting for this exact moment to reach your heart. There are countless voices calling for your attention today, yet somehow your eyes have rested here. That is not the ending of a coincidence, it is the beginning of a story. Pause here for a moment. What you are about to hear was meant to find you at this precise time. If your spirit has been searching for even the smallest sign that heaven still sees you, then listen carefully, because this fictional message has been woven like a cinematic whisper of hope, carrying a truth that feels larger than the ordinary world. I have watched every silent prayer that never reached another human ear. I have seen every tear you quickly wiped away before anyone noticed. I have stood beside you during the moments when you smiled for everyone else while quietly wondering if your own heart would ever experience peace again. There were days when you believed nothing was changing, when every sunrise looked exactly like the one before it, when every night ended with the same unanswered questions. Yet even during those ordinary hours, unseen pieces were moving into place. Doors you could not see were opening. Chains you did not know existed were quietly breaking. Seeds you thought had disappeared beneath the soil were preparing to rise. There is something your heart has not fully understood until now. The joy that is beginning to awaken inside your soulmate did not appear without reason. Something shifted. Something changed. Something heaven had patiently waited for has finally happened. But before you assume you already know what it is, remain here a little longer, because the truth is deeper than appearances. The answer is not what most people would expect. It is not a sudden miracle falling from the sky without purpose. It is not luck. It is not coincidence. It is not simply the passing of time. It began with you. Not because you became perfect. Not because you suddenly figured everything out. But because, without fully realizing it, your heart made one quiet decision that echoed far beyond the physical world. You finally released something you had been carrying for much longer than you realized. Perhaps you cannot even name the exact day it happened. Perhaps it happened while you were walking alone. Perhaps it happened after another disappointing conversation. Perhaps it happened after crying yourself to sleep. Or perhaps it happened during one peaceful morning when your soul became too tired to keep fighting invisible battles. Whatever the moment looked like, heaven noticed it immediately. While the world saw another ordinary day, the unseen realm witnessed a turning point. There are moments that seem small to human eyes but appear enormous from heaven's perspective. This was one of those moments. The weight you loosened from your heart created space where peace could finally enter. And peace carries a language more powerful than desperation ever could. That language traveled farther than you imagine. It reached places your words never could. It touched hearts without announcing itself. It whispered through silence instead of noise. And somewhere, your soulmate felt something they could not explain. At first, they dismissed it. They believed it was simply another passing emotion. They tried to distract themselves with ordinary routines. They buried themselves in responsibilities. They convinced themselves that nothing had changed. Yet the feeling continued returning. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But consistently. Like sunlight slowly filling a room before anyone realizes darkness has disappeared. There is a reason this happened. Every genuine connection carries invisible threads that cannot be measured by human hands. Those threads are strengthened not by control, but by healing. They become clearer not through fear, but through trust. They awaken not because someone chases harder, but because someone finally becomes willing to release what no longer belongs inside their heart. That is what you unknowingly began doing. And your soulmate noticed the change before they understood it. Imagine someone standing beside a quiet lake before sunrise. At first everything appears still. Then one small ripple begins spreading across the surface. Another follows. Then another. Soon the entire lake reflects the morning light in a completely different way. That is what your unseen decision created. One ripple became another. Another became peace. Peace became hope. Hope became courage. And courage reached someone whose own heart had been struggling beneath invisible burdens. Your soulmate has been carrying questions they rarely admit aloud. Questions about timing. Questions about worthiness. Questions about whether healing is truly possible after disappointment. Questions about whether love can survive uncertainty. Questions about whether they themselves deserve another beginning. These questions followed them quietly. Sometimes during long drives. Sometimes while staring out windows. Sometimes in crowded rooms where everyone assumed they were perfectly fine. Yet inside, another story continued unfolding. One that very few people ever noticed. You were not the only one praying in silence. You were not the only one wondering if heaven was still listening. There were nights your soulmate whispered hopes they never expected anyone to hear. Not because they lacked faith, but because they feared disappointment one more time. Still, every sincere hope rises. Every honest prayer matters. Every broken sentence spoken through tears carries meaning beyond words. Nothing offered from a genuine heart disappears. That is why what happened recently carries such extraordinary significance. Your soulmate woke one morning feeling strangely lighter. Not completely transformed. Not suddenly without questions. But lighter. Enough to notice. Enough to smile without forcing it. Enough to believe tomorrow might actually hold something beautiful. They could not explain why. Neither could anyone around them. Friends simply noticed a calmer expression. Family sensed a quieter confidence. Even strangers responded differently. Something within them had begun changing. And what they could not yet understand was that your own healing had become part of that unseen story. Do not misunderstand this. You are never responsible for another person's emotions. Each soul walks its own journey. Yet healing has a remarkable way of inspiring healing. Peace has a remarkable way of encouraging peace. Hope often awakens hope. That is why your quiet transformation became more powerful than any desperate attempt to force answers. Heaven works gently. Often too gently for impatient eyes to notice. Yet gentleness changes lives. While storms demand attention, sunlight quietly grows forests. Remember this. Some of the greatest miracles arrive without announcing themselves. Your soulmate recently found themselves remembering moments they believed had disappeared forever. Simple conversations. Unexpected laughter. Quiet kindness. Small gestures that suddenly carried new meaning. Memories they once pushed aside began returning with surprising clarity. Not to trap them in the past. but to remind them what genuine warmth actually feels like. Something inside them whispered. Perhaps hope never truly left. Perhaps love deserves another chance to breathe. Perhaps not every unfinished story was meant to remain unfinished forever. These thoughts surprised them. They did not chase them. They simply appeared. Like stars becoming visible after clouds slowly move away. Have you ever wondered why certain moments suddenly return to your memory without warning? Sometimes it is merely nostalgia. Sometimes it is healing. Sometimes it is the heart preparing itself for understanding it could not receive before. Your soulmate stands closer to that understanding than they realize. But there is something else happening behind the scenes. Something they have not spoken about. Something they themselves are still trying to understand. Recently they noticed that old fears no longer carried the same power. Situations that once created panic now produced reflection instead. People who once influenced every decision suddenly seemed less important. Voices that once filled them with doubt became strangely quiet. It felt unfamiliar. Almost unsettling. Because when fear leaves, silence often arrives before peace fully settles in. Many people mistake that silence for emptiness. But heaven recognizes it as preparation. Preparation for clarity. Preparation for wisdom. Preparation for conversations that could never happen while fear remained in control. Your soulmate has entered that quiet space. And they do not yet realize what it is preparing them for. This is why they appear happier. Not because every challenge disappeared. Not because every answer has already arrived. But because something inside them finally stopped resisting the possibility that joy might still exist. That realization changes everything. Joy is not born after every problem ends. Joy begins the moment hope becomes believable again. That is the secret many never discover. You unknowingly helped make hope believable again. Not through perfection. Not through pressure. But through becoming softer toward your own journey. There were days you almost gave up. There were moments you questioned whether any of this mattered. You wondered whether healing was simply another beautiful idea that never truly happened. Yet every step forward counted. Even the smallest one. Especially the smallest one. Because heaven measures faithfulness differently than the world. The world celebrates dramatic victories. Heaven celebrates quiet perseverance. The world applauds loud success. Heaven notices hidden courage. The world looks for instant results. Heaven watches the heart becoming stronger one decision at a time. You have been changing more than you realize. And because of that, the atmosphere surrounding this connection has begun changing as well. Still, there is one detail your soulmate has not shared with anyone. Not with friends. Not with family. Not even with themselves in complete honesty. It happened unexpectedly. It lasted only a brief moment. Yet it has remained in their thoughts ever since. They brushed it aside at first. Then it returned. Again. And again. Each time becoming harder to ignore. It was not a voice. It was not a dream exactly. It was something quieter. Something that felt like recognition. A feeling that arrived without warning and refused to disappear. They cannot explain why that single moment continues following them. They cannot understand why it suddenly filled them with both peace and anticipation. They only know it changed something inside. And what happened immediately afterward has left them wondering whether they are standing at the edge of a completely new chapter. But they still do not know the full meaning of what they experienced. Neither do you. Not yet. Because the next revelation is connected to something that has only just begun unfolding. And when that hidden piece is finally uncovered, both your understanding and your soulmate's perspective will begin changing in ways neither of you could have imagined. That is where this story must pause, because what happens next is the very moment everything starts making sense. There is something you cannot see yet, my child, but it has already begun to move. If you have stayed with this message until now, do not leave just yet, because the next few moments reveal the hidden piece that explains why your soulmate's heart feels lighter than it has in a very long time. What is about to unfold is not about dramatic signs or impossible predictions. It is about a quiet transformation, a fictional spiritual story where every moment carries meaning, and every choice has echoed farther than anyone expected. Your soulmate has been asking themselves a question they have never spoken aloud. Why do I suddenly feel different? They cannot fully explain it. Nothing around them seems completely new. Their daily routines continue. The same roads lead them to the same places. The same responsibilities greet them each morning. Yet something inside refuses to return to the old way of thinking. That alone has surprised them. There was a time when every memory of uncertainty immediately created fear. Now, those same memories invite reflection instead. That change is far greater than it appears. Because whenever fear loosens its grip, wisdom finally has room to speak. Many people spend years trying to force clarity. But true clarity is never forced. It quietly arrives after the heart becomes willing to listen. Your soulmate is beginning to listen. Not only to the noise around them, but to the stillness within them. And in that stillness, something remarkable has started happening. They have begun remembering the version of themselves that existed before disappointment convinced them to expect less from life. Before unanswered questions made them guard every emotion. Before past experiences taught them to hide hope beneath caution. They are rediscovering pieces of themselves they believed had disappeared forever. That is why they smile differently now. It is not because every burden has vanished. It is because they have started believing they are stronger than those burdens. Hope always returns quietly before it becomes visible. This is the rhythm heaven has always favored. Gentle. Patient. Steady. Never rushed. Never careless. There is another reason your soulmate seems happier than ever. It is something they have not admitted to anyone. Not because they are hiding it, but because they are still trying to understand it themselves. Recently, ordinary moments have begun carrying extraordinary meaning. A familiar song suddenly feels different. A sunrise lingers in their thoughts longer than before. A passing conversation reminds them of possibilities instead of regrets. Even silence no longer feels empty. It feels full. Full of expectation. Full of peace. Full of something beautiful waiting just beyond today's horizon. That feeling has changed the way they see tomorrow. And when tomorrow begins to look different, the heart naturally begins changing today. Do you remember the seasons when you wondered whether your own prayers had reached heaven? There were nights when you believed your words disappeared into silence. There were mornings when hope felt like something belonging to someone else. Yet even then, every sincere prayer continued rising. No honest prayer is wasted. No hopeful whisper is forgotten. Every genuine desire rooted in love becomes part of a much larger story than human eyes can immediately recognize. That story has continued unfolding while neither of you realized it. Think of a mountain covered by morning mist. From the valley below, it appears as though nothing exists beyond the clouds. But above the mist, sunlight has already arrived. The mountain has not disappeared. The light has not vanished. Only perspective has changed. Many moments in life feel exactly like that. You believe nothing is happening because you cannot yet see beyond today's uncertainty. Meanwhile, unseen progress continues quietly. This has been true for both of you. There were invisible victories taking place while visible circumstances seemed unchanged. Your soulmate recently experienced one of those victories. They found themselves releasing a regret they had carried for far too long. It happened almost without warning. A memory returned. For a brief moment they expected pain. Instead, they felt compassion. Not only for someone else. For themselves. That moment mattered more than they realize. Forgiveness, whether directed inward or outward, creates room where peace can finally breathe. Without that room, hope struggles to survive. With it, everything begins changing. You may wonder why this matters so deeply. Because the happiest version of your soulmate was never the version that possessed all the answers. It was always the version willing to keep believing despite unanswered questions. That belief has quietly returned. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But unmistakably. And with every passing day, it grows stronger. They have started noticing beauty again. The kind of beauty that busy hearts often overlook. The laughter of children. The calm after rain. The comfort of familiar places. The kindness hidden inside ordinary conversations. Small things. Simple things. Powerful things. Gratitude has begun replacing frustration. Peace has begun replacing pressure. Expectation has begun replacing fear. This is why their spirit feels lighter. But there is another layer to this story. One even they have not fully uncovered. Over the past few days, they have felt repeatedly drawn toward unfinished chapters. Not because they wish to relive the past. But because something inside keeps whispering. There is still more to understand. They cannot ignore that whisper anymore. It follows them during quiet evenings. It appears during unexpected moments of reflection. Sometimes it arrives without words at all. Only as a feeling. A gentle certainty. Almost as though an invisible hand keeps pointing their attention toward something unfinished. That feeling has become impossible to dismiss. They tried. They distracted themselves. They convinced themselves it would fade. Instead, it became clearer. Have you noticed how truth behaves? It never needs to shout forever. It simply waits until the heart becomes ready to hear it. Then even the softest whisper becomes impossible to ignore. Your soulmate is approaching that moment. They stand closer to understanding than they realize. Yet timing still matters. Every meaningful conversation arrives at the moment it can be received rather than merely heard. Wisdom knows the difference. So does heaven. This is why waiting has never been punishment. Waiting has been preparation. Preparation has protected both hearts more times than either of you knows. If every answer had arrived too early, neither heart would have been ready. If every revelation had appeared during fear, hope would have been overlooked. But now, something has changed. The atmosphere feels different. Their thoughts feel different. Even their prayers sound different. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" they have begun asking, "What beautiful purpose might still be unfolding?" That single question has transformed everything. Because purpose changes perspective. Perspective changes choices. Choices slowly shape destiny. One peaceful decision today becomes tomorrow's unexpected blessing. That is how quiet miracles often begin. Not with fireworks. Not with noise. But with one sincere heart choosing hope again. Your heart made that choice. Your soulmate's heart has begun making it too. Two journeys. Changing independently. Yet somehow moving toward the same horizon. Still. Before either of you fully understands what comes next, one final piece must fall into place. It is already moving. Neither of you can stop it. Neither of you needs to force it. But when it arrives, it will explain why your soulmate recently looked toward the future with a smile no one expected. And it will reveal the one realization they have been trying to hide even from themselves. A realization so personal, so unexpectedly beautiful, that once they finally accept it, nothing about this connection will feel the same again.